It was a Friday afternoon when my phone rang, the kind of afternoon that feels suspended in amber, lazy and golden, the last period of the day winding down, the distant hum of the janitor's floor buffer echoing through the empty hallways. I was at my desk, a sturdy oak thing I'd inherited from a retired calculus teacher, surrounded by stacks of ungraded quizzes and the faint scent of dry erase markers. The window to my left framed a perfect autumn scene, leaves the color of rust and honey tumbling across the parking lot, a sky so clear it hurt. I was reviewing paperwork, finalizing the budget request for new graphing calculators, when an unfamiliar number flashed across my phone screen. I almost didn't answer it. I was busy, and I didn't recognize the area code. A part of me assumed it was another robocall, another scammer pretending to be from the IRS, another automated voice telling me my car's warranty was about to expire. But something made me pick up. Maybe it was the persistent buzzing, the way it vibrated against the wood like an insistent insect. Maybe it was just a feeling, a prickle at the base of my skull, a quiet premonition that I was about to hear something I didn't want to hear. My name's Regina. Regina Patterson. I'm 44 years old, a high school math teacher at Northwood High, the same school I'd graduated from 26 years earlier. I'd been teaching there for 2 decades, long enough to see my former students become parents themselves, long enough to have my name on a plaque in the teacher's lounge for perfect attendance. I've been married to my husband Marcus for 17 years. We've got 2 kids, Jordan and Maya, 14 and 11, both of them bright and messy and endlessly hungry. We have a mortgage on a modest colonial house with a creaky front porch and a backyard maple that turns a brilliant crimson every October. We have the kind of stable, ordinary life that I'd always taken for granted. I wasn't rich, but I was comfortable. I wasn't famous, but I was respected by my peers, my students, and the community. I had a good life, a life I had built brick by brick, through discipline, hard work, and a steadfast belief in doing things the right way. Or so I thought. Am I speaking with Regina Patterson? The voice on the other end asked. It was formal, official, the kind of voice that made me sit up a little straighter in my chair. It had a flat, bureaucratic quality, devoid of emotion, the voice of someone who had made thousands of these calls and had long since stopped caring about the human on the other end. Yes, this is Regina. Who's calling? This is Johnson Collections. We're calling regarding a loan that was taken out in your name. The payments are significantly overdue, and we need to discuss a repayment plan before we proceed with legal action. The words didn't make sense at first. They hung in the air, disconnected from any reality I recognized. A loan? I had a mortgage, of course. I had a car payment, but I had never taken out a personal loan. Not in my entire life. I was meticulous about my finances. I balanced my checkbook every month. I checked my credit report annually. I was the kind of person who read the fine print on every document before signing. I'm sorry, I said, my voice measured, calm, the same voice I used when a student gave me an excuse that didn't quite add up. There must be some mistake. I didn't take out any loan. I have no idea what you're talking about. There was a pause, the faint clicking of a keyboard. Ma'am, the loan was taken out in your name 3 months ago. The amount is $25,000, and no payments have been made. We have your signature on the documents, your social security number, your date of birth, your current address, all of it checks out. My heart started pounding, a sudden, frantic drumbeat against my ribs. The room, which a moment ago had been warm and familiar, suddenly felt cold and alien. I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles whitening. That's impossible. I never signed anything. I never took out any loan. Someone must have stolen my identity. I understand your concern, ma'am. But you need to understand that the loan is in your name, and you're legally responsible for it. If you don't make arrangements to pay, we'll have no choice but to pursue legal action. That could include wage garnishment, liens on your property, and significant damage to your credit score. I strongly advise you to take this seriously. Wage garnishment, liens, my credit score, which I had painstakingly built over decades, reduced to rubble because of something I didn't do. The unfairness of it was staggering. I asked for details: the date the loan was taken, the institution that issued it, the address used on the application. The man on the phone, his voice still flat, still unsympathetic, read them out. The address was a P.O. box I'd never heard of. The institution was a lending company in another state. And the signature, he said, looked clean and legitimate. I hung up the phone in a daze. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. A frenzied hamster wheel of questions and fears. How could this have happened? Who would do this to me? I thought about my students, some of whom came from difficult backgrounds, some of whom had made mistakes. But this wasn't a teenager's prank. This was a sophisticated fraud. Someone had my social security number, my date of birth, my mother's maiden name. Someone had access to the most intimate details of my identity. And then it hit me. The answer was obvious. There was only one person who had access to all of that information, only one person who knew my entire history, who had been in my home, who had seen my documents, who had been trusted with my secrets. My cousin, Patricia. Patricia and I had always had a complicated relationship, a tangled knot of affection and resentment that stretched back to our earliest memories. She was my mother's sister's daughter, and we'd grown up together, almost like sisters. We were the same age, born just 3 months apart. We'd attended the same schools, celebrated the same holidays, sat at the same tables at family gatherings. We were the same in so many superficial ways. But at our core, we were complete opposites. I was the responsible one, the good student, the rule follower from the time I was a little girl. I had an almost obsessive need for order. I lined up my stuffed animals by size. I organized my crayons by color. I did my homework the moment I got home from school. I craved structure, predictability, safety. My parents, both hard-working people who had never gone to college, encouraged my studiousness. They saw in me a chance for a better life, and I didn't want to disappoint them. I went to college on a partial scholarship, worked 2 jobs to cover the rest, and graduated with honors. I got a degree in mathematics education, found a job at my old high school, and built a career that gave me deep, quiet satisfaction. I wasn't chasing fame or fortune. I was chasing stability. And I caught it. I did everything right. Patricia was the wild one, the partier, the troublemaker. From the time we were children, she chafed against any kind of rule or boundary. She'd steal candy from the corner store, lie to teachers about her homework, sneak out of the house at night to meet boys. She was magnetic, charismatic, the kind of person who could make you feel like the most important person in the world when she turned her attention on you. But she was also reckless, impulsive, and utterly incapable of thinking about long-term consequences. She dropped out of high school in the 11th grade, convinced she was destined for something bigger than a diploma. She bounced from job to job: waitress, retail clerk, phone sales, receptionist, never lasting more than a few months before she got bored or got fired. She had a string of bad relationships with men who were equally unstable, men who borrowed money they never repaid, men who disappeared in the middle of the night, men who left her with bruises and debts and broken promises. She'd always been in trouble, always been scraping by, always been looking for a way to get rich quick. Over the years, I'd tried to help her. It was my nature. I was the fixer, the caretaker, the one who believed that if you just loved someone enough, they could change. I'd lent her money, small amounts at first, then larger ones. $100 for groceries, $200 for rent, $500 for a car repair that she swore was an emergency. She always promised to pay me back. She never did. I'd given her advice, long heart-to-heart conversations over coffee or on the phone, where I'd listen to her problems and suggest practical solutions. I'd helped her get jobs, calling in favors with friends and acquaintances, vouching for her character, even when I had my doubts. I'd believed that she could change, that she could get her life together, that beneath all the chaos and poor decisions was a good person waiting to emerge. But she never did. Every time I thought she'd turned a corner, she'd find a new way to crash. Every time I thought she'd hit rock bottom, She'd find a shovel and start digging deeper. And every time I'd be there, ready to help, ready to forgive. Because she was family. Because my mother had always told me that family sticks together. No matter what. Because I couldn't bear the thought of giving up on her. And now, she'd stolen my identity. The realization settled over me like a shroud. I replayed all the moments in my mind, the times she'd visited my house, and I'd left my purse unattended. The times she'd asked about my family history for a project. The times she'd jokingly called me her twin and asked if our social security numbers were similar. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. She hadn't just stolen my identity on a whim. She'd planned this. She'd preyed on my trust, my love, my unwavering sense of familial duty. She'd used me as a piggy bank she could smash open whenever she needed cash. I called her that afternoon, my hands still trembling, my voice barely under control. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I expected her to ignore it, to screen my call, but she answered on the second ring. "Hey, cuz, what's up?" Her voice was cheerful, casual, like she didn't have a care in the world, like she hadn't just committed a felony, like our relationship was perfectly normal. That voice, so light, so unconcerned, made something inside me snap. "I know what you did," I said, my voice cold and hard as a frozen lake. "I know you took out a loan in my name. I got a call from collections today. They're threatening legal action. $25,000. Patricia, $25,000 that I never borrowed, that I never signed for, that I knew nothing about until a stranger called me this afternoon and threatened to garnish my wages." There was a long pause, the kind of pause that speaks volumes. I could hear her breathing the faint background noise of a television. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Defensive, angry. The mask had slipped. "I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't take out any loan. You're crazy. You've always been crazy, Regina. You've always been so paranoid, so suspicious of everyone. It's one of your least attractive qualities. Don't lie to me, Patricia. I have the evidence. The collection agency has my signature on the documents. But I never signed anything. Someone forged my signature. And I know it was you. You're the only person who had access to my information. You know my social security number. You know my mother's maiden name. You've been in my house. You've seen my files. I didn't do anything," she snapped, her voice rising. "You're just trying to blame me for your problems. You've always been jealous of me. You've always tried to make me look bad, to make yourself look like the perfect one, the successful one, the one who did everything right. Well, you're not perfect, Regina. You're not better than me. Jealous of you?" I let out a bitter laugh. "What do I have to be jealous of? I have a good job, a good marriage, 2 beautiful children, a house I love. I have a life that I built with my own 2 hands. You have nothing, Patricia. You've never had anything. You've spent your entire life taking from other people money, time, trust, and giving nothing back. And now, you just ruined whatever chance you had to be part of my life. I don't need you," she hissed. "I don't need anyone. I'll get out of this. I always do. I've survived worse things than your little accusations. You'll see. You'll all see. I'm going to be successful. And you're going to regret ever doubting me. Not this time. This time you're going to face the consequences. I'm going to the police. I'm pressing charges. This isn't a misunderstanding or a family squabble. This is identity theft. It's a crime. Patricia, a serious crime, and I'm going to make sure you pay for it." There was a beat of silence, and then her voice changed again, softening, trembling. "You wouldn't do that. I'm your cousin. I'm your family. You wouldn't send me to prison. We grew up together. We're blood. Your mother would be so disappointed in you." The mention of my mother, who had died 3 years earlier, who had loved Patricia like a second daughter, who had always urged me to be patient, to be forgiving, cut through me like a blade. But I didn't waver. My mother would be horrified by what you've done. She would be heartbroken, and you don't get to use her memory to manipulate me. Not anymore. You should have thought about all of that before you stole my identity. I continued, my voice rising, every suppressed frustration of years pouring out. You should have thought about that before you ruined my credit. You should have thought about that before you put my family at risk. Do you understand what you've done? My credit score is probably in the gutter. My name is attached to a delinquent loan. I could lose my security clearance at work, my reputation, everything I've spent decades building. And for what? So you could have a few months of easy money? She started to cry. Then, great heaving sobs that might have moved me once. Long ago. I'm so sorry, Regina. Please. Please don't call the police. I'll pay you back. I swear, I'll get a job. I'll do anything. Just don't ruin my life. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the old habit of mercy. The old voice that whispered, she's family. Give her another chance. But then I remembered the collection agent's cold, clinical voice. I remembered the terror I'd felt, the violation, the sense of my carefully ordered world crumbling around me, and I remembered all the other chances I'd given her. All the money I'd never seen again, all the lies I'd believed. No, I said quietly, I'm done giving you chances. You ruined your own life, Patricia. I'm just making sure you can't ruin mine, too. I hung up the phone before she could say another word. Then I sat at my desk, alone in the quiet classroom, and I cried. I cried for the cousin I'd once loved, the little girl I'd played with in my grandmother's backyard, the teenager who had confided her dreams to me under a blanket fort. I cried for the trust that had been shattered, the family bond that had been severed. And I cried because I knew, deep down, that this was the end. There would be no reconciliation, no redemption, no happy ending. When I composed myself, I drove home, told Marcus everything, and we sat together at the kitchen table. The weight of the revelation settling between us. Marcus was furious, more than furious. He was devastated, because he too had loved Patricia, had welcomed her into our home, had believed the best about her. He held my hand and said, whatever you decide, I'm with you, 100%. The next morning, I went to the police. I dressed carefully, a dark blazer, a white blouse, the kind of outfit that signaled seriousness and credibility. I walked into the station and asked to speak with a detective in the fraud unit. A woman named Detective Helen Marquez took my statement. She was in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun and the calm, patient demeanor of someone who had seen every variation of human deception. I told her everything about Patricia, about our history, about the phone call from the collection agency, about the forged signature and the stolen identity. I gave her all the evidence. I had the phone number for Johnson Collections, the details of the loan, the P.O. box address. I also gave her the emotional evidence, the context that only a family member could provide. Detective Marquez listened carefully, taking notes in a small, leather-bound notebook. When I was finished, she leaned back and said, I've seen this 1,000 times. Family fraud is the most common kind of identity theft. The victim never sees it coming because the perpetrator is someone they trust. I'm sorry this happened to you, but I want you to know that we're going to do everything we can to build a solid case. The investigation that followed was methodical and relentless. The police traced the loan application back to an IP address that matched Patricia's apartment. They subpoenaed the lending company and obtained the original documents filled with Patricia's handwriting, her fingerprints smudged on the corners of the pages. They found her signature on the forms, a clumsy imitation of my own, that a handwriting expert quickly identified as a forgery. They even found voice recordings from the customer service line, Patricia's unmistakable voice impersonating me, rattling off my personal information with practiced ease. It was, as Detective Marquez put it, an open and shut case. Patricia had been brazen and sloppy, convinced that her familial connection would protect her from serious consequences. She had underestimated the system, and she had fatally underestimated me. She was arrested on a Tuesday morning, 6 weeks after I'd received that first phone call. I wasn't there to see it. Detective Marquez called me afterward to tell me. Patricia had been at her apartment, still in her pajamas, when the officers knocked on her door. She had screamed, cried, tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, but the handcuffs had clicked shut anyway. She was charged with identity theft, fraud and forgery, 3 felony counts that carried a potential sentence of several years in prison. But I didn't stop there. The criminal case was one piece of the puzzle. I also had to reclaim my identity, to scrub the stain of her crime from my financial record. I went to the credit bureau's Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and filed detailed disputes. I submitted the police report, the loan documents, and a sworn affidavit. I spent hours on the phone, navigating automated menus and speaking with customer service representatives who were alternately sympathetic and indifferent. I was determined, patient, unrelenting. After 3 months of relentless effort, the fraudulent loan was removed from my credit report. My score, which had plummeted to a number that made me feel physically ill, slowly began to climb back up. I also took steps to make sure Patricia would never be able to do this to anyone ever again. I contacted every credit bureau, every bank, every financial institution I could think of. I added extended fraud alerts to my credit file, requiring creditors to take extra steps to verify my identity before extending any credit in my name. I provided them with Patricia's full name, date of birth, and known addresses, ensuring she was flagged in their systems as a known identity thief. I even contacted her landlord, her employer, her friends. I didn't do this out of malice, or at least, not entirely out of malice. I did it because I felt a moral obligation to warn others. Patricia had a pattern, a lifelong habit of exploiting people's trust. If I stayed silent, she would find another victim, another cousin, another friend, another naive person who believed in second chances. The fallout was swift and absolute. Her landlord, upon learning that she was facing felony charges, initiated eviction proceedings. Her employer, a small retail store where she'd worked for less than a year, terminated her immediately, citing a loss of confidence in her integrity. Her friends, the few who had stuck by her through years of drama, finally distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone who would steal from her own family. She lost her apartment. She lost her job. She lost her friends. She lost everything. And she was alone. Completely and utterly alone. There were moments, late at night, when I felt a twinge of guilt. I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, and wonder if I had been too harsh. She was my cousin. We'd shared a childhood. We'd buried our grandparents together, stood side by side at funerals and weddings, exchanged Christmas gifts and birthday wishes. Was I really going to be the one who sent her to prison? But then I would remember the terror of that first phone call, the shame I'd felt even though I'd done nothing wrong, the humiliation of explaining to my bank, my creditors, my employer that my own flesh and blood had betrayed me, and the guilt would evaporate, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. She had made her choices. I had simply held her accountable for them. Patricia's trial was quick. The evidence was overwhelming: the forged documents, the fingerprints, the voice recordings, the IP addresses. Her court-appointed attorney tried to argue that she had been under severe financial stress, that she had intended to pay back the loan, that she was a victim of circumstance. The prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Annika Desai, countered with Patricia's long history of financial irresponsibility, her previous unpaid debts, and the cold calculation of her crime. This wasn't a desperate act of survival, Annika argued. It was a deliberate, premeditated fraud against a family member who had shown her nothing but kindness. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. They returned with a verdict of guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. I didn't go. I didn't want to see her. Didn't want to hear her excuses, her lies, her desperate pleas for mercy. I had already moved on. I had put the trauma behind me and was focused on rebuilding my life, my marriage, my sense of security. But Marcus went. He felt that someone from the family should be present, that the whole sordid affair shouldn't just disappear into bureaucratic silence. He came home that evening with a heavy expression and told me that Patricia had been sentenced to 5 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 3. She had wept when the sentence was read, had turned to the gallery as if searching for a friendly face, and had found only Marcus, whose stony gaze offered no comfort. 5 years. A long time, but I knew, in my bones, that it wasn't just about punishment. It was about containment. For the next 5 years, Patricia would be in a place where she couldn't hurt anyone, no new loans, no new frauds, no new victims. And maybe, just maybe, she would have time to reflect on the choices that had brought her there. It's been 3 years since Patricia was arrested. 3 years since I took my life back. 3 years since I made sure she'd never hurt anyone again. I'm happy now. Truly, deeply happy. I'm peaceful. I'm free. The cloud that hung over my life for so long, the guilt, the obligation, the constant anxiety about what Patricia would do next has finally lifted. I wake up in the morning without a knot in my stomach. I go to work without looking over my shoulder. I sleep at night without lying awake, worrying about the next crisis. I've rebuilt my credit. I've rebuilt my reputation. I've rebuilt my trust in the world. Though it's a trust that's now tempered with a healthy dose of caution. I check my credit reports regularly. I monitor my bank accounts. I'm careful with my personal information in a way I never was before. The innocence I once had, the unthinking assumption that family meant safety, is gone. In its place is something stronger. Wisdom. I've learned a valuable lesson, one that I try to pass on to my students, to my children, to anyone who will listen. Trust no one blindly, especially not the people who claim to love you. Love and trust are not the same thing. Love is a feeling, a bond, a connection. Trust is an action, a privilege that must be earned and maintained. I still love Patricia, in some complicated, painful way. I love the memory of the little girl who shared my summers and my secrets. But I do not trust her. I will never trust her again. So what's the lesson here? What's the takeaway from all of this? I think it's this. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you are the ones who hurt you the most. Sometimes, the people who claim to care about you are the ones who are the most selfish, the most manipulative, the most willing to exploit your kindness for their own gain. The myth that blood relations are automatically worthy of your loyalty is just that, a myth. A dangerous one. But that doesn't mean you should stop trusting entirely. It doesn't mean you should close yourself off from love, from connection, from the joy of genuine relationships. It just means you should be careful. You should protect yourself. You should always be vigilant. You can love someone and still set firm boundaries. You can be generous and still require accountability. You can forgive and still refuse to be a victim. Because the people who want to hurt you are often the people who know you best. They know your weaknesses, your soft spots, your deep-seated need to be loved and accepted. They exploit your empathy. They weaponize your history. They count on your silence. Don't give them that power. If you're reading this and you've been a victim of identity theft, whether by a stranger or, worse, by someone you know and love, I want you to know something. I want you to know that you're not alone. I know the feeling of violation, the sickening realization that someone has been living in your name, spending your money, destroying your reputation. It's a unique kind of horror, a blend of rage and shame that can eat you alive if you let it. But I also want you to know that it's not your fault. You are not to blame for someone else's criminal choices. You are not stupid for having trusted someone. You are not weak for having been exploited. The fault lies entirely with the person who chose to steal from you. Own that truth. Hold it close. And I want you to know that you have the strength to fight back. It's scary. I know it's scary. The thought of someone stealing your identity, ruining your credit, destroying your life, it's terrifying. The process of reclaiming your identity can feel like climbing a mountain with a backpack full of rocks. There are phone calls to make, forms to fill out, bureaucracies to navigate. There are moments when you'll want to give up, to just accept the damage and move on. But I promise you, you can recover. You can rebuild. You can move on. I did it. Thousands of other victims have done it. There is a path out of the darkness, and it starts with a single step, deciding that you are worth fighting for. Just take it one day at a time, one step at a time, one phone call, one form, one conversation. Slowly, piece by piece, you will put your life back together. And when you emerge on the other side, and you will emerge, you will be different. Stronger, wiser, more resilient. You will know in a way you never knew before that you are capable of surviving the worst life can throw at you. You've got this. I believe in you. Looking back on everything that happened, I don't regret any of it. Not the pain. Not the heartbreak. Not the betrayal. Not the sleepless nights or the anxious days or the difficult conversations. All of it led me here. All of it made me who I am today. I am a woman who knows her worth. Not because I'm perfect. Not because I've never made mistakes. But because I've faced the worst and refused to be broken. I am a woman who refuses to be a victim. Who will never again let someone else's dysfunction dictate the terms of my life. I am a woman who understands that sometimes the only way to win is to fight back, not with cruelty or revenge, but with justice, with truth, with the unshakable conviction that I deserve to be treated with respect. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I would, exactly the same way. I would still trust Patricia, because my capacity for trust is not a weakness. I would still help her, because my generosity is not a mistake. And I would still, in the end, hold her accountable, because my strength is not something I will ever apologize for. Dear Patricia, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't know if you'll ever understand what you did to me, to my family, to the bond we once shared. Maybe you'll spend your years in prison stewing in resentment, blaming me for your fate, telling yourself that you were the victim. Or maybe, just maybe, you'll find a moment of clarity, a moment of genuine self-reflection. Maybe you'll realize that I wasn't your enemy. I was your last best chance to face the truth before it destroyed you completely. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, not because I've forgotten what you did, but because I can't carry that anger around anymore. It's too heavy. It takes up too much space in my heart, space that I need for the people who actually love me. Forgiveness isn't for you, it's for me. It's the final step in reclaiming my life, my peace, my freedom. I hope you find peace. I hope you find redemption. I hope you find a way to become the person you were always meant to be, the person I glimpsed sometimes. Beneath all the chaos and the lies, the person who was capable of kindness and creativity and love. I hope that when you leave prison, you leave behind the patterns that ruined your life. I hope you start fresh, somewhere far away, and I hope you never hurt anyone again. But I'll never forget what you did. I'll never fully trust you again, and I'll never let you back into my life. Some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. Some wounds once healed leave scars that remind you to be careful. You are my scar, Patricia. I will carry the memory of what you did for the rest of my life. But I will not carry the pain that I release. Goodbye, Patricia. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. But I can't be part of that journey. Our story is over. This is the final page. Sincerely, Regina. Loved this story. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell icon so you never miss a video. I upload brand new stories every single day. Gripping, emotional, and packed with twists that'll keep you guessing until the very end. Don't forget to like this video if it gave you all the feels. Comment below. Have you ever been a victim of identity theft or fraud? How did you handle it? I read every single comment. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the best lessons come from other people's experiences. Got a story idea? Drop it in the comments. Your suggestion might just become the next video on this channel. Subscribe now and join our growing family of story lovers. New videos drop daily at 7 a.m. EST. Perfect to watch with your morning coffee. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until next time, stay strong, stay aware, and never let anyone make you feel like you're powerless, because you have more power than you know, and you always have.